This is our presentation, The New Space Race, by Benjamin Joppich, Clare Hamilton, Christian Dieleman, and myself, Worthington. So space exploration first took off during the Cold War, when Russia launched the Sputnik missile into outer space. The US felt the need to outdo the Russians during the Cold War because they wanted capitalism over communism. So they launched the Apollo program, accounted for a large part of NASA's budget, almost 4.5% of the entire federal budget in the 1960s. That's the United States trying to outdo the Soviets. However, with Worthington in the 1970s and a lessening of priority that, they went down to around 1%. And because of that, there really wasn't much advancement in space exploration after we put a man on the moon. Because of this, space exploration largely remained stagnant for around 3 decades. However, it took off in the early 2000s when private space companies such as SpaceX started trying to put rockets into space. With companies like this that are able to put rockets like the Falcon Heavy into space, many people ask a question that we are going to investigate in the project. Should the United States privatize space exploration? Now Benjamin Joppich for the economic ones.
The answer from an economic perspective is yes. Through government contracts that will help these companies to grow and create their own revenue before they can create their own ventures. So in this slide you can see a prototype that Planetary Resources plans to use when they mine asteroids, and these two SpaceX things were actually created to ship astronauts to the International Space Station, which was part of a contract that SpaceX recently achieved with NASA. This chart shows the recent contracts that NASA has had with many of these space corporations. The variety of companies shows how NASA is trying to promote the entire industry rather than a single company. These contracts vary from small products, as you can see, to larger transportation of both astronauts and goods to the International Space Station. Now to Mary Clare for the scientific perspective.
So for the scientific perspective, I really wanted to focus on the topic of research. And so like Ralph said, the International Space Station and NASA really sparked interest in this topic in the 60s and the Cold War. And the reason for that was astronauts were coming back from these space missions with severe health issues such as bone demineralization, cardiovascular issues, and sleep disorders. However, over time, this research has been pushed to create things such as the Hubble telescope, which later that technology was translated into creating CAT and MRI scans, as well as radiation therapy. The public and private debate is something very near and dear to the research division of NASA because while private companies offer less regulation and more flexibility in funding, the lack of accountability when it comes to selling the research can be very detrimental to organizations and hospitals who thrive on their partnership with NASA. Furthermore, for every dollar invested in the NASA research division, there's a $7 to $14 return investment. And so with this is a very economic, productive part of NASA. And so this is one reason why we should be, from a scientific perspective, continuing the funding within NASA. Now on to Christian with the environmental ones.
An aspect often forgotten in the discussion of space exploration is its impacts and effects on the environment. And this observation has a tendency to lend itself to an ethical perspective as well. So the connection between space exploration and the environment begins with the field of parallels to industrialization and technological development. And the pace of development in space exploration mirrors that of these fields, all good things in themselves. However, the benefits of technological development do have several drawbacks, including ever-limited availability of natural resources critical to life today, such as the metal platinum, as well as a need for availability of physical space to accommodate an ever-growing population. These two examples specifically have great importance as they give many possibilities for solutions that private space companies are looking to explore. For example, companies are looking towards asteroid mining as a means of obtaining these difficult to find resources. And they are motivated strictly by economic means, but their actions also go to alleviate the growing strain and conflict surrounding the extraction of these resources. So their efforts are actually helping much more than just their economic gains. And the other example, attempting to accommodate an ever-growing population has been of efforts to establish a sustainable home for humanity on places other than Earth, like Mars and the Moon. So these private companies have demonstrated great effectiveness and efficiency in undertaking these challenges, but they lack the political and moral motivation that NASA has. As a government organization, they are bound to service of the people, and therefore they serve to look towards their needs. So this questions whether private companies are able to adequately drive space exploration. Now on to Ralph with the futuristic plans.
So the current space travel technologies we have limit us to Earth's orbit in the Moon. We can't realistically go to Mars and beyond, deep space travel, and send humans there without serious advances in space technology. Now, private companies really can't afford to do this type of investment in risky, unproven technologies. They just can't risk that kind of money. However, NASA can, because they have the government funds. They can fund research and development of these new space travel technologies. Along the way, they also fund the expensive learning process. This graph shows the cost of recent Mars orbiter missions. The first missions are extremely expensive, around $671 million. However, as time goes on, within 5 missions, they went down to $74 million. Private companies can't afford to spend $671 million per mission. However, when the price goes down to around $74 million, it suddenly becomes feasible for them to do missions like that. NASA can put the money in to spend $671 million because, again, they have the government funds. So by launching the first missions, they gain valuable insight that will let private companies do the same thing, but for much cheaper. Now, Clare Hamilton for the problems of privatization.
So one thing that was suggested by many people when we were doing our research was going completely private with the space industry. However, also for our research, we saw many concerns with that. For example, the monetary aspect, sponsorship and development and regulation, and the sharing of information. So with private companies solely relying on funds of certain groups or just certain people, the research and the technology coming out of these efforts are limited by the lack of money that they might have. And while most companies have no regulation on how to obtain their information and then to do what they please with their findings, this can, we risk the opportunity of never learning some of the greatest questions that we have and finding the answers that can really benefit humanity as a whole. So on to Ben is going to explain our solution.
Our solution is a symbiotic relationship between NASA and private companies, which NASA provides contracts to private space companies, pursues scientific research, and develops new technologies. This solution will provide economic incentive for private companies to invest in space exploration while preserving competition. It would also allow NASA to make new scientific discoveries and technological advancements, so these private companies can use them later for their own economic ventures. It would also give more direction to these companies, which may not dedicate their funds to the most pressing issues at the time. It would also allow NASA to regulate these companies in their missions and their ventures that NASA and the government may not have if they were to release these companies to do their own thing. So now on to Christian for the implications and limitations of our solution.
This solution presented would mean little divergence from the way that space exploration is being conducted currently, that being the contract system, but it would serve to strengthen it and make it more robust and efficient, ideally increasing the amount of investment and subsequent competition in the industry. However, there are still some limitations to this solution. The presence of the government in the industry still allows for the influence of a burdensome and cumbersome bureaucracy whose regulation, guidelines, restrictions, and overall control limits what companies can do, yet the benefits of NASA's involvement in the space industry still outweigh its drawbacks. Here are references.
Ralph, we'll start with you. Having finished your project, what, if anything, do you consider to be a gap in your team's research that, if addressed, would make you feel more confident about your conclusion?
So we integrated the political lens into our presentation throughout, though we didn't investigate it directly through our research reports, and after the presentation we realized that it's really a gap in our research because NASA is so intertwined with the government. For example, the spaceship that NASA's working on, they really don't want to work on. It's called the Saturn, but the government, through Congress, they make them do it. So it's kind of a sticky situation, and it's one that we didn't really explore, but it's very influential in shaping that relationship between NASA and private companies.
Thank you. Christian, can you give one specific way that your thinking changed as a result of learning about Ben's findings?
Yeah. So that's the economic perspective. Focusing solely on the environmental, I didn't really go into much depth into his perspective, and just the competition aspect, I incorporated it more into mine. I focused just on these new industries such as asteroid mining and like creating sustainable homes on other planets. So but I found that the government themselves are pursuing these as well. So there's just much more government involvement as well, and more competition in the industry that I just didn't know about.
Thank you. Ben, in the future, what change would you make to your group norms or expectations, and how would you expect that to improve your overall ability to work with your group?
So we would have more group discussions, and I personally think we should have more group discussions about how our papers were going well and how our presentation, how we thought it would turn out. Also, we'd be stricter on our deadlines. This would help us to maybe procrastinate less and, be more effective.
Thank you. And Mary Claire, what would you say was the strongest counter-argument to the solution or conclusion that your team identified and why?
We addressed kind of it in the presentation, but there was a lot of political as well pull for the completely private route in his research that wasn't really brought up in this, but something that we thought was interesting was a lot of people were saying that in a few years we weren't going to need NASA, and the push for these private companies is going to eradicate it, and so we shouldn't keep pouring money into an industry and a company and an organization that's not going to last. And so we did take that into consideration when coming up with our solution, but that was definitely the biggest push against ours.